program, the title of my keynote speech is Media Literacy and Media Engagement, Two Essentials for the Muslim Ummah Today. And I would like to start first by talking about the concept of media literacy, and then we're going to move on to the second part, which is media engagement. So what is media literacy and how can we possibly define this important term? Media literacy, simply put, is the way that we can understand how to engage with the media and understand the media and sort out the media in the most effective and productive way. In other words, how can you tell the difference between authentic news, real news, or misinformation and disinformation? Especially now in the age of the internet communication and digital media and social media, we all spend many hours every single day on our devices, our laptops and iPads and cell phones. But then we are also receiving a flood of information every single day. And we need to have the media literacy skills in order to be able to tell the difference between what is trustworthy and what is not. So how can we possibly acquire this kind of media literacy? I think that personally, I believe that it's very important to design certain academic curriculums and certain courses to train and educate all people, starting from KG1, starting from those who are in nursery, up to those who are in college. K to 12 and beyond in higher education, we need to include media literacy in our curriculums, in our educational curriculums, and in our books and teachings in the classroom. But we also need to remember that education and teaching does not just take place in the classroom. There is also what's called informal education. And informal education also takes place outside of the classroom, in community engagements, in public spheres, in day-to-day interactions, in interpersonal communication. So we need to also educate the parents, and we need to train the trainers to acquire these much needed skills in order to be able to pass them on to children and younger ones. Let me just tell you that yesterday, I actually was in an elevator and there was a young family with two kids. The kids maybe are 3 and 4 years old. The parents were talking to them. The children were not looking at the parents. Each one of them had their own device in their hand, small device that they were looking at all the time, not making eye contact with their parents or anybody else. And when the parents started to take away the device from them, they started to have a temper tantrum and to get very upset and to have some kind of emotional reaction. And I've seen that time and time again in public spaces like airports and elsewhere. So it is never too early to start really telling young people about media, about communication, about cell phones, about iPads, about the internet, because this is an integral part of everyday life, even for those who are as young as 3 and 4 year old, believe it or not. So that is why this is very important. Why is that particularly important for the Muslim Ummah, which is the topic or the focus of this conference and also the topic and the focus of my own keynote speech? Well, because we also as Muslims need to understand the media and how when we see certain pictures and certain photos on the media, are they authentic? Are they photoshopped? Was there some kind of deep fake? Deep fake is when somebody tries to create some kind of simulated reality, like having me now standing in front of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Well, this is not true. I'm in Maryland in the United States, right? But there can be some kind of deep fakes where they actually try to create some kind of parallel reality, which is not authentic and it's not trustworthy. So when we as Muslims, we know very well that we are misrepresented and underrepresented in the media, and that is a reality. In order to go on or move on to the second part about media engagement, we first need to acquire the much needed media literacy skills, and we need to teach them to our own children and young ones at home, at school, at the university, in public spaces, in the community, and elsewhere. So I strongly advocate for the inclusion of media literacy courses for everybody in general, and for Muslims and those who are designing curriculums for Muslim students in particular. Now let's move on to the second part, which is very much intertwined and connected to the theme of media literacy, which is media engagement. How can we as Muslims in today's modern world, with all its ongoing paradoxes and challenges and difficulties and hardships, how can we possibly engage with the media in the most effective, in the most authentic, in the most productive way? I believe that we need to also have media engagement training. We need to actually be able to design certain courses and curriculum to tell us how to engage with the media. So the media engagement part is extremely essential and crucial. Again, just like we talked about media literacy being essential and crucial for everyone from K to 12 and in higher education and beyond, media engagement is also extremely important. How can we possibly achieve this goal of media engagement in an effective, productive, and useful way? Well, we can also have formal education and we can also have informal education as well. The formal education, again, I would go back to the point of inclusion in the curriculum from K to 12 and beyond. And in the informal education, I would also argue that Islamic centers, Islamic universities, I know that you had speakers from Zaytuna University and other Islamic institutions and universities speaking at this important conference. I would strongly recommend having courses that are designed about media engagement and how to encourage Muslim youth to actually engage with the media rather than fear the media or be scared of the media or be intimidated about the media spaces and how to navigate them safely and productively. We need to be including that not just in the K to 12 general education and higher education in general, but in Islamic centers, Islamic universities, Islamic institutions, Islamic community centers, and beyond. This is extremely important. And it's especially important for Muslims for the reasons we mentioned about stereotyping and misrepresentation and underrepresentation. There has been research, for example, from Pew Research and Gallup Research and others that shows that, for example, when there is some kind of terrorist attack or some kind of crime that actually happened, the identity and the religious affiliation of the person who did this crime is never mentioned in the news, except in one case. And I'm sure you can make a smart guess. It is when the person happens to be a Muslim. Unfortunately, this is a very sad reality, but it is a reality. If the person who committed this particular crime or this particular attack happens to be a Muslim, you're going to see the identity of this person being, Muhammad Muhsin Abdul Rahman, who is originally from this particular country, and he is a Muslim. You don't see this happening with other faith traditions. You don't see this particular crime being affiliated to someone and then the person's identity and religious affiliation mentioned. And that, of course, is a big discrimination on the part of the media. So if we as Muslims have the right tools of media literacy and media engagement, we're going to be able to detect these types of biases and discrimination patterns when we actually see them in the news. This is number one. We can detect them. We can actually point at them and say, this is discrimination. This is bias. This is not acceptable. This is not a fair treatment. And then step number two is what you can do about it. And what you can do about it is very important. So you need to have the right toolkit in order to be able to address these issues of bias, discrimination, stereotyping, false representation, misrepresentation, and underrepresentation when they actually happen, when they actually take place. So how can we do that? The training is very important, but also training the journalists, the Western journalists. For example, ISPU, the Institute of Social Policy and Understanding, I'm sure many of you know about it. It's a research institute and a think tank that does a lot of research about American Muslims. And they actually have a training the trainers programs and workshops for Western journalists. So they offer certain training sessions and workshops for Western journalists. When you cover the Muslim community, here are some of the do's and don'ts. Here are some of the things that you should look for. Here are some of the things you should notice. Here are some of the things you should avoid. Here are some of the words you should not affiliate or associate with Muslims. You should be more culturally sensitive. You should be more religiously sensitive. So this is a very, very important initiative and a very important effort on the part of ISPU. And I hope that more Muslim institutions, universities, organizations will organize similar training courses, mini courses, workshops, training sessions for Western journalists. I also hope that more and more parents are going to encourage their children, their daughters and sons, to study journalism and communication and filmmaking. This is very important. I know that in many Arab/Muslim families, people want to see their sons and daughters being doctors or engineers or lawyers. And that's because these are very highly paying and profitable professions.
And I admire all of these professions. But let me tell you that also majoring in fields like communication and journalism and media writing and filmmaking is very important. And it is really a mission, risala. You can think of it as a mission, as a duty on our shoulders as a Muslim community. Why? Because if we don't tell our own story in our own voice and tell our own narrative with our own words, someone else is going to tell the story and it's not going to be an accurate one. So for a very long time, we have been complaining. We are not given sufficient space in the media. We are underrepresented. We are not given a fair space. We are also misrepresented. We are not given fair and equitable and accurate representation in the media. Well, complaining is not enough. We have to do something about it. And doing something about it also includes encouraging our young people, our sons and daughters, to go into schools of journalism, media, and communication, and to become communication and media experts, communicators, script writers, directors, filmmakers, television anchor woman or anchorman, TV presenters, you name it. The list can go on and on and on. And let me tell you that many of these professions, except for being a university professor, are very well paying. Right? So if you go into filmmaking or directing or production or script writing, these are very well paying professions, right? The only one that is not very well paying is being a university professor, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the reward for doing what we are doing, because we are intending to also educate the newer generation and to help them to acquire these kinds of much needed skills. So I hope that by the end of this keynote speech, you grabbed or you're able to grasp the importance of these two concepts of media literacy and media engagement, especially with the challenges facing the Muslim Ummah today. And I will end by saying that the famous or infamous word Islamophobia, or the excessive fear and hatred of Islam and Muslims, has been spreading massively, as you can, of course, understand, especially after October 7th and with all the tragic events in Gaza. But let me also tell you that digital media and social media can be a double-edged sword in that regard, meaning they can be tools for the spread of Islamophobia. You can see a lot of Islamophobic content, Islamophobic rhetoric, Islamophobic postings on social media. But social media and digital media can also be a double-edged sword because it can also be used to counter Islamophobia. So a lot of my writing and research has been dealing with the notion of Islamophobia on social media and how it is possible to actually also counter Islamophobia using the tools of the internet and of social media. When it comes to Islamophobia in particular, we need to understand the pros and the cons, the advantages and the disadvantages, how it can proliferate and spread Islamophobia in many negative ways, but also how it can be used effectively and productively, designing certain campaigns and doing certain efforts and initiatives on social media and digital media to counter Islamophobia and counter the misrepresentation and stereotyping and discrimination and unfair representation of Islam and Muslims on the internet. And Muslims in general, American Muslims in particular, have been really engaging with some of these efforts in a very commendable and very remarkable and effective way in recent years. And for that, we should give them credit. We also need to engage more. So these are important steps, but I would say they are baby steps in the right direction. We need to see more steps. So I think that having conferences like this one, talking about these issues, engaging with these issues, raising awareness about these issues is a very important step in the right direction. But I hope that we're also going to follow up with many more steps, inshallah.